but it's not about winning. It's not actually about the goal. And so when we beat ourselves up because we miss an arbitrary number by an arbitrary date, and even if you hit the goal, the problem is?
I believe self-doubt is one of the biggest killers to anyone's dreams.
Yeah.
So how does someone develop self-confidence and sustain it with the ever-going changes and stresses and uncertainties that always come up?
Yeah.
Once you reach a certain level, there's a new uncertainty.
Yeah. So I think it's ironic that we call it self-confidence. Because I don't, for one, think it comes from the inside. I think our self-confidence comes from the outside. Right?
You mean that's the wrong way of going about it, or you think that's where it comes from in general?
We are being misdirected by the name. When we say build your self-confidence, that's the instruction is saying go inside, look inside oneself. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a false direction. Children aren't born self-confident. Their confidence is built from their parents and their friends and their teachers, where they're rewarded when they do well and they're pushed when they fail, when they can do better. Simply, we know this, that simply telling kids that they're great all the time actually doesn't build self-confidence, actually does the total opposite. Right? And I, for one, I can tell you, in my own experience, my own self-confidence, 100% comes from the relationships that I have. It's not some deep internal fortitude. A world-famous trapeze artist is not going to try a brand new death-defying act for the first time without a net. So it's the people in my life. It's when I do doubt myself that somebody says, "You got this." When somebody says, "I believe in you." When somebody says, "No matter what happens, whether it succeeds or fails, I'm going to be by your side." That's when I have the confidence to do difficult things.
Wow.
Right? I don't have some natural battery that just
right.
That to me is bravado.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's self-confidence. Being a huge risk taker is not an indication of self-confidence to me. Jumping out of a plane and jumping out of a plane with a parachute are two different things. Right?
Right.
To me, self-confidence is measured, and there should be a degree of doubt. But I think true self-confidence, belief in oneself and belief in one's cause, I could not do the things that I'm doing, and I would not have the strength to have made the sacrifices that I've made, or continue to wake up on a daily basis to drive to spread this message, if I were alone. And so when we talk about building one's self-confidence, I think the mistake that we make is that we look inside. I think the reality is when we're trying to build our self-confidence, we should be looking to our friends, we should be nursing our relationships. When I'm looking to build my self-confidence, the question is, who around me do I need to take care of? The way we build our self-confidence is by helping somebody else build theirs.
Right.
It's an act of, we will build our confidence with an act of service. So I'll tell you a true story. So I did an experiment. I love doing experiments in my own life.
Yeah, me too.
I have mad thoughts, and I'm like, well, let's try this one out. So I have a very dear friend who has stuck with me through thick and thin, she is absolutely profoundly one of the reasons that I am who I am today, right? And I have my confidence in large part because of her, right? She's one of a small group of people who I look at and say, yep, good friend, right? Yeah. She was struggling, like seriously struggling. Oh, let me take a step back. So we decided that we were gonna, she was struggling. She was going through some hard things in her life. Career wasn't going the way she wanted. Her personal relationship was struggling. There was a lot of rough.
She was lacking confidence.
There was a lot of rough. Yeah. She was lacking confidence. Yeah. And we would get together on a regular basis, and I would attempt to coach her. And she'd feel great for the hour after she left me, and then it would very quickly go back to normal. Right. And we'd get back together, and I would coach her, and she felt great for the hour after she left me, and then it would go back to normal. And I can't say that there was some profound change being made in her life. So I had a harebrained idea. I went to her and I said, I need your help. I said, I'm struggling. I don't have a coach that I that I love and trust. You've known me for years. I trust you with everything. I feel unbelievably safe around you. Can you put together a program and can you coach me? I think you're good at it. And it wasn't reciprocal. It wasn't, I'll coach you, you coach me. I said, it's just, I need your help because I'm struggling. It was legit. It wasn't like I was just making stuff up.
You were stressed.
It was legit. I could do with the help and I trusted her to help me. And something profound started to happen. Over the course of just a few weeks, it wasn't even a few months, but over the course of a few weeks, she started to gain way more confidence. Her career started to really move in a more positive direction. Her relationship firmed up. And the more that she was in service to me, the more that she grew herself.
Wow.
So I think self-confidence, I wish we didn't call it self-confidence. Because like I said, I think it gives a false direction. The way we build confidence is with. Con means with, doesn't it?
Interesting.
So I have no idea the
interesting.
etymology of confidence.
That's interesting.
Just making stuff up here. But con means with. To confide. Let's look this up because fidelity, is something to do with truth. So confide, right? Look it up with the etymology of look up the etymology of confidence. It's to confide is two people, like a conspiracy is a co-whisper. That's what conspiracy is, the co-whisper. So confidence is co-fidelity.
Right.
What is it? So let's see if the instinct is matched by the etymology of the word, and which if it isn't, I'm still okay with it.
Yeah. You look,
what do you give me? What does it say? So it comes from late Middle English, confident translations, origins, and meaning. Here we go. Unlike etymology dictionaries. God love it. Where does the word come from? It's about trust or reliance. But what's the actual etymology of the word? Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and waste everybody's time.
Can look it up.
But it comes from cum fidre. And fidre means to trust.
To trust yourself or trust other people?
So cum, what does cum mean? It means with. It means with trust.
Wow. That could be with trust with yourself.
I think it's been that's my point. I think it's been. I think it's like a conspiracy A conspiracy requires two people. You cannot have a conspiracy with one person. It's a co-whispering. You commit the crime of conspiracy when you tell someone something, and you're both in on it. Right. So I think confidence is the same thing. I think it's at least two people who undertake the task of trust and reliance.
So she was coaching you, and you saw a change with over a few weeks of her
confidence built,
and her belief in herself.
Her belief in herself grew when she was in service to helping me. And so that goes back to the root of the question: how do you build your self-confidence?
Or how do you overcome self-doubt?
How do you overcome self-doubt? Help someone else overcome self-doubt.
I love that. I love that.
You overcome self-doubt by helping, and it's not a selfish thing. I'm only helping you so I can. You have to genuinely love and commit to the person. This person that you're helping, you have to genuinely care about their success and their confidence and their lot in life.
Yeah.
So,
it's so true. Everything comes back to service.
And like I said, it goes back to the origins of humankind, right? Which is we are naturally tribal animals, and we actually are at our best when we are in service to each other in a cause greater than ourselves.
The more we focus on what we're lacking, what we don't have, what's not working for us, the challenges we're going through, the more doubt we're going to have.
Correct.
When we're inwardly focused on what we don't have.
Oh, I wish we'd had this conversation about 8 months ago, because I would have written half the stuff in the book.
I'm writing a book on self-doubt right now.
Well, because this is what the infinite mindset is all about. A finite mindset is win-win-win, be number one, be the best. Me. Right?
Win-win-win meaning win at all costs, not win-win.
Correct, not win dash
not
win.
Win.
It's win, comma, win, comma, win.
Yeah. Because the infinite game is you win, I win, the world wins, right? We all win. Humanity wins.
Right, it's a whirlwind. That's funny.
It's not win-win.
Right. So we are players in infinite games every day of our lives, whether we like it or not. There's no such thing as being number one in marriage. Like, good luck with that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's not going to
there's no one who's declared the winner of life. And there's no such thing as winning business or winning global politics. But if we listen to too many leaders, they talk about being number one, being the best, and beating their competition.
This was me in my entire life.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
Until like 6-7 years ago when I learned that doesn't work anymore.
And you're an Olympian.
Well, I haven't made the Olympics, but I'm on the Olympic handball team, yes. On the national team.
Okay, whatever. You're at the highest levels of athletics.
Yes.
And you know this from spending time with athletes, which is individual athletes.
I know. It's all about
where
winning.
Team athletes tend to be a lot healthier.
Yeah.
So like individual athletes, when they reach the top of their game, Michael Phelps, Andre Agassi, they become the greatest in the world. The next thing that happens to them is depression, right?
Yep.
Whereas team athletes, you win the World Series, you win the Super Bowl, it doesn't, like, deep depression is not the next thing that happens.
Some people maybe, but not in general.
But not in general. And the Olympic athletes are such a unique, and I talked to a bunch of them for this book.
Especially the gymnasts who are like 16, you have 1 billion people watching you, you win the gold medal.
Yeah.
Now what?
And it is one of the most selfish finite pursuits because the entire pursuit is, I'm going to be number one.
The gold medal.
Right, and they all say the same thing, I want to win the Olympics. Yeah. Well, you don't actually win the Olympics. You win one event.
Yeah.
You know, but they all say the same thing, I'm going to win the Olympics, right? And then they say nonsense like, no one inspire all the little children. Not a single one of them on their vision boards has pictures of little children overcoming adversity. They have pictures of them standing on podiums, holding medals, holding up trophies, or the vision boards. It's entirely a selfish pursuit, right? And any inspiration to little kids is just a Lucky Strike extra that's really good for the press conference, right? But not a single one of them is waking up doing it for the kids. Right. I drag myself out of bed. I'm running in the rain. I missed Thanksgiving for the kids. Didn't happen. Never on any planet, right? It was for me, right? And so there's this, whether they medal or not, when they're done, even if they were medalists, when they're done with the Olympics and their ability to pursue, they've spent their entire lives from their childhood to adulthood striving to be number one. And let's be honest, they're not the best. They're just better than everybody else that day. Which is really funny to me, right? Which is, you can get a gold medal in pick a sport, ice skating, and you fell in your routine. But if everybody else fell twice,
you're the best.
You're the best.
Yeah. You're the winner.
But you're not. You're just better than everybody else in the competition because it's finite.
Yeah.
And finite has known players, fixed rules, and agreed upon objectives. It's only the players. But it's not life. And there's an imbalance. Yes, finite games are very important. Finite games and finite objectives are essential in an infinite game. Right? But the infinite game is the context for those finite games. I need to excel or be the best here in order to X. Right? And recognize that this is not the end all be all. The analogy for living with an infinite mindset is not about winning. Right? The better analogy is exercise. Right? So how do you be a healthy person? Well, you have to eat well, you have to get enough sleep, you have to nurse your personal relationships, and you have to exercise. If you do some of those things, you'll be healthier than doing none of those things, but you kind of have to do them all, right? Living an infinite mindset is the same thing. There's a series of practices. Do some, you'll be better than none, but you kind of have to do them all, right? And the way the finite mindset fits into it is, I want to get into shape. I've been sitting on the couch for most of my life watching TV. I'm going to get into shape. And I have a fitness goal, a finite goal that I can easily measure, my weight. I can look on a scale and I can measure the progress. And I've made the goal that I'm going to lose this amount of weight by this date. And so I commit to a healthy lifestyle. I eat better, I exercise more, I'm getting more sleep, and I'm watching the weight fall off. And I miss my goal. I don't lose the amount of weight that I wanted to lose by the date. So what? You're still healthier, and you're on you're on the road to being healthier. And I can see for a fact that you absolutely will hit the goal later on. And even if you hit the goal, the problem is you can't stop exercising. You have to do it for the rest of your life. That's what an infinite mindset is. An infinite mindset is more like a lifestyle, which is, yes, absolutely, having finite goals is very important. We are absolutely driven by goals. We like measuring things. It is much easier to get into the lifestyle of exercise and the habit of it if I have metrics. Look at the insanity of Fitbits and things like that, which overdone is actually unhealthy and has adverse
obsessiveness.
But we'll talk, it's not the subject. But the point is, it's helping people get up and have a healthier lifestyle. We like measuring stuff. Yeah. It's a human thing, right? But it's not about winning. It's not actually about the goal. The goals and metrics are simply a way to help us measure speed and distance. I've lost this amount of weight over this amount of time, right? You cannot run a marathon without mile markers. It's unnerving. Mm-hmm. The mile markers help me measure how far I've gone, and how fast have I gone. Yeah. And the metrics we have at work help us measure how far we're moving and how fast we're moving towards a vision that is, for all practical purposes, unrealizable. Mm-hmm. Right? That's the infinite game. There's a context. And so when we beat ourselves up because we miss an arbitrary number by an arbitrary date, but the question is, are we building a healthy organization? Mm-hmm. And I would rather organizations do all the right things to build a healthy organization, even if they miss arbitrary dates. One of my favorite stories is Gary Ridge from WD-40. WD-40 is a public company.
Huge company.
It's a decent-sized company, which is kind of incrable because it's basically
just oil.
Basically one product.
It's like
basically one
grease.
Product. It's it's very sophisticated lubricant that was actually made for the space program. But by the way, we talked about fancy food, and their offices they just moved into a new office recently. Their old offices were a dump.
Really?
And yet the morale through the roof.
Why is that?
People love work because it was never about the office. It was about the people. Wow. It's never about the office. It was about the people, right? Anyway, they have a lovely new office now, but it's still about the people. That's why I said before, it's is it the food? Well, it depends on the company. Anyway, he was on one of his quarterly analyst calls, and one of the analysts said, "You missed your numbers." And Gary said, "No, I didn't. I missed yours. Mine are fine."
Wow.
Right? And that's the point, which is there's nothing wrong with having metrics and goals. Those are very important to human beings. But to what end? What are we serving bigger than ourselves? Right? So my analogy is like an iceberg. Right? So we know that the majority of an iceberg lies underneath the water. So when there's a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of the iceberg sitting above the ocean, right? It's the visionary who can see beneath the ocean. Mm. It's the visionary who stands there, and even though everybody sees a tiny or nothing, they can see nothing. The visionary is able to explain what exists in their imagination only. Okay, it only exists in their imagination, and they inspire a few people to join them because like. Yes, we can do that. And they start working, and a little bit of the iceberg shows. And a few people go, oh, it's going to work. And so they commit to joining the movement or the company, and a little more of the iceberg shows, right? And before too long, enough of the iceberg shows that people can go, this is a real thing. You're not insane and crazy. What you're doing is actually in reality. Right. But the thing is, the vast majority of the iceberg still exists under the ocean. And so what the visionary does is constantly remind us where we're going and how much more we have to do. And though we can celebrate how much we've achieved, how much of the iceberg is sticking up above the ocean, the reality is we have way more work, and when I die, it's still going to be the majority underneath the ocean.
Before the interview continues, if you feel like you're not living your most authentic life, not leaning into your purpose, and not living the life that your future self would be extremely proud of, I've written a new book called The Greatness Mindset, and I think you're going to love this. Through powerful stories, science-backed strategies, and step-by-step guidance, The Greatness Mindset will help you overcome all the different challenges in your life to design the life of your dreams and then turn it into your reality. Make sure to click the link below in the description to get your copy today. Okay, let's get back to this video.
Was there ever a moment where you didn't unconditionally love yourself? And if so, when did that shift where you stopped that and you started saying, okay, I appreciate myself because of my contribution and my service and who I am? When was that shift?
I don't think it was ever I just didn't love myself. There were times, obviously, be angry with yourself or frustrated with yourself or thinking, I'm not doing enough. I mean, I can remember my birthdays, to be honest with you, probably up to my 40th birthday, including my 40th birthday. You have a birthday with a 0 on it once you're over past 30. 35, sometimes 5 years on it as well, people look at their life differently culturally. And I used to think it was bullshit. But sure enough, I would do it. I remember turning 40, and I was really, really unhappy. I was like, Jesus, I've not done enough. I've not helped enough people. I helped tens of millions of people at that point already. Done all over the earth in 100 plus countries at that point. But it was still kind of stuck in my head. So I would earn the love by over-delivering, change somebody's life. Like, I don't get it because somebody says, oh, I love you, Tony. I mean, I appreciate that. Or, oh, you're the greatest. It's got to be my standard. My standard's higher than their standard for me, right? So when I get up and someone's going to kill themselves and they're suicidal and boom, turn around and they're no longer not going to kill themselves, but they're transformed, their life is there. That's when I go, okay, now we've hit the center of what I'm made for. Now, I deserve to feel this euphoric feeling within myself and appreciation. And even then, I still know it's God coming through me. I don't have the delusion it's just me. But I think sometime after 40, I finally saw the stupidity of it. And I accumulated enough that I looked at life with fresh eyes. And I can say by the time I turned 60 a year ago, I noticed it was interesting because my birthday, I didn't have an ounce of it. I was just like, how could I at this stage of my life when I've had the privilege of serving so many humans in so many contexts, from turning around, guys going to kill themselves with PTSD to helping kids turn around to getting kids off cocaine or adults to, helping people build multi-billion-dollar businesses from nothing. And when I've lived this long, I can't go by without hearing half a dozen stories a day or dozen stories a day from people telling me how something I did changed their life. So it's not that I'm so smart now, it's just I've stacked it. By the way, though, stacking is the way you can do things. Most of us stack the negative. If you are really angry, it's not usually because of just the moment. It's that it happened again. It's like if you've ever lost it or overreacted to your kid or to a friend or a business or even within yourself, it's because it happened again. We hit this 1, 2, 3 many point, and then our nervous system overreacts. But what I've learned is you can stack the good. But for example, if you go into a state of really strong anger for more than 5 minutes, your immune system is suppressed between an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's a physiological fact. But no one had done any study. I started stacking good. Like, okay, let me stack a dozen great memories, feel them, see them, experience them. And I felt this biochemical change that didn't just last a half hour, an hour, or 10 minutes. It went on for a day or two. And so I think I've learned to stack the good. So just having the experience is not enough. You got to stack the good to be able to appreciate it. But I think, just come back to the main point here from my perspective, which could be completely full, it's just my perspective. So I want to point that out. I think the more you find unconditional love for others, the easier it is to find in yourself. And I think the focus is serving and loving, and that's what will get you to the point where you start doing it. But if you want to speed it up, stack all the good you've done, you'll feel great about yourself.
I already know all the comments that have come through. Thousands of comments tell me, but what about my family that's toxic? What about my partner who's toxic? And how do I love someone unconditionally when they don't respect me? I can't trust them. What about situations like that?
All those reactions are natural human reactions from ego. Because it's all about you, me, what I'm not getting, what I'm not doing, and that's why you're in pain. And so I'm not telling you like I haven't done this shit. I've done it too in the past, but it's an old pattern I don't really do anymore. And it used to affect me. Now, not a dominant one, I wouldn't have become who I become. Early in my life, I developed this belief that life is calling not to give me something. Life is calling for me to deliver things, for me to bring something to life. And I felt the joy that came from not getting but giving. And I got hooked on that core pattern, and then the pattern of learning so I'd have something to give, which I know one of the things I respect about you, Lewis, is that you have that same pattern in you. You're always trying to learn more because underneath it all, you also want to give it. You want it for Absolutely. You, but you want to share it, right? And so those patterns help me not be in what they're not giving me. And all this language, today people don't understand the power of their language, like toxic. What the hell are you talking about? You've been reading too much social media and thinking about yourself, or somebody raised you to constantly judge everybody else. We live in a culture now where people, you're evil or you're like me. That's basically how it is, right? The whole world, everybody else is immoral unless they do what you do, think what you think, experience what you think. I mean, being a liberal, I was a liberal, right? Being a liberal growing up meant I would fight for your ability to say and believe whatever you want different than me. Today now, everybody wants everybody to think the same thing, otherwise they're evil or otherwise they could hurt me. Whatever happened to sticks and stones will break your bones and words will never hurt me. We have this whole thing that words are evil, words are action, it's bullshit. And all it does is make you incredibly weak as a human being, and you're more than that. We all are more than that. But you know what? Like a kid that's never broken their bones, deathly afraid of breaking the bone. But if you're a kid and you're rough and tumble, you broke multiple bones and they healed, you don't have any fear of it. There's so many kids that have been raised to be safe and secure every moment. Anything that's insecure or unsafe, they don't want to be a part of, including language. And what it does is make you incredibly weak and fearful. And that's why there's so many people that are abundant that are angry all the time. Because they're angry because they're not growing. So don't get me wrong. I know some people are not a good influence. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying you're more than somebody's influence unless you obsess about it every moment and make them wrong so you can make yourself feel superior morally, psychologically, or spiritually. That's bullshit. Stop the pattern. We've all done it. Catch yourself. Because if you want joy, happiness, and freedom and an extraordinary life, it will not come from blame. Never. There's no pride that comes from blame. I don't mean fake pride where you make up to feel good. I'm talking about real pride. Pride is something you earn. Like people tell me, oh, I have no self-esteem because my parents used to say this or they'd say that. I'd say that's such bullshit. I'm not saying it's bullshit they didn't say that. I said it's bullshit, that's why you don't have self-esteem. Self-esteem does not come from what people say about you. Self-esteem comes from what you experience about yourself. See, someone can tell you your whole life you're a piece of crap, and part of you can go, you're full of it, I'm going to show you. Lots of people have done that. They never bought it. Or someone tell you you're beautiful your whole life. You go, I'm not really beautiful. So what people tell you doesn't matter at all. It's what you stack. It's what you assemble. It's what you create. It's the habit of what you put in your head. And today I don't blame you because we got a whole culture that's always blaming somebody else for something in their life. But blame is not a strategy for pride. That's why you listen to these blaming people. They're all angry all the time. Listen, if I wanted to blame, I grew up in an environment, I didn't even share it till my mom passed, and even then I didn't share. I grew up in a pretty rough environment. My mom was a beautiful soul, but when she drank alcohol and she mixed it with prescription drugs, it was a different creature, and it was a violent creature. And I have a younger brother 5 years younger and a younger sister 7 years younger. And my mom would get nuts. And I didn't want them to get hurt. So I was 5'1" in high school. She grabbed me by the hair and smashed me against the wall till I bled. Now, I never shared this, and I'm not denigrating her in any way. I only shared it like 4 or 5 years after she died because I was talking to a group of kids in New York City, all without fathers, 80% African-American, about 20% Hispanic out of their group roughly, no white kids, and I'm talking about your biography is not your destiny. And it doesn't matter what you've been through. What you decide now is what's going to control your life. What you decide each day going forward is going to decide your life. And I look at them seeing me, and I can read their minds. This big, tall, white, rich guy is going to tell me biography doesn't matter. So I said, let me tell you my story. And I told them the whole story, way more than I'm telling you. And every one of them was crying their eyes out when they're done. I said, look where I am right now. Because I wouldn't assemble the story that my past equals my future. The past only equals your future if you live there. If you're using a rear view mirror to guide yourself, you're gonna crash. So what you've been through is horrific. What you've been through is unjust. I'm on your side. But if you hang on to it, you have no future and you have no one to blame but yourself. And these kids, to their credit, man, they just responded to the challenge because they first cried their eyes out hearing all the stories. My mom would think I was lying, and I wasn't lying. She poured liquid soap down my throat till I threw up, and I wasn't lying. So it's not the physical abuse, it's the fact that this is the person you love most that's trying to hurt you that messes with your head. So I could have been messed up for life, but I didn't. Because something inside me says, I'm responsible for this life. And part of that is because I started reading when I was 13, 14 biographies of people, the greatest people in history, and reading their lives and finding out, guess what? Their lives were far from perfect. Some of them had worse lives than I had. But when you have no reference and all you do is go online, you talk to other people, making everybody else toxic, and I'm like this, and they didn't do that, then you get to have this shitty life just like those other people. Why are they online so much? Because they don't have a life. Right? Don't be one of those. Free yourself from the chains of your past. I'm not saying your past doesn't matter, but listen, my mother, I tell people this all the time, and it's the truth. If my mother had been the mother I wanted her to be, the mother she should have been, I would not be the man I'm proud to be today. Because I had to become a practical psychologist way before any schooling, figure out when's she gonna go in the mood, how do I change her state, how do I protect her from the kids, it felt life and death, and it was to some extent. So I developed skills at such a young age. Then when I learned things, I just added to my skills, but I had a core sense of certainty that I could turn anybody around because it started with my mother. And thank God for her. And she encouraged me in so many ways. She did so many great things. And she loved me, even though it didn't look like it at times. So,
right.
But if your parents, if the people around you said all the things you thought they should have, if they had just not been toxic, if they'd encouraged you, you wouldn't have any muscle. And right now you don't have any muscle because you're using that as the excuse, if you're thinking that. And I'm not attacking you, brothers and sisters. I'm calling to you because I know you're more. Otherwise, I'd just keep my mouth shut. You've been hypnotized by a culture of weakness. Now, having said that, I'll say one last thing. I know you haven't got other questions, but it's so important what you asked. Yes, there are people that you don't want to hang out with that will not serve you. But then move on. Don't sit there and talk about it constantly. Don't waste your time. And you say, but what if it's family, Tony? Mine was family too. Then you learn to grow. You go, they're in my life. If someone can get your goat, if someone can piss you off, if someone can make you feel less than, that's God coming to you saying, grow. You need some spiritual growth. There's got to be some change in your perception, your belief, your emotions, your spiritual look of life. So that can't happen anymore. And when it happens, like at 61, I've been through so many of those things, and I like to do things in mass. I took on big challenges, so I'd have to grow more. But then life throws them at you too. When they come, you just go, okay, it's going to have me until I grow. What needs a shift in me so that it no longer has an impact? But Jim Rohn used to say, my original teacher, he used to say, Tony, what happens if I've got a cup of coffee here? And he'd say, what if your worst enemy drops sugar in your coffee? What's going to happen? And I go, well, you'd have sweet coffee. And he goes, what if your best friend, your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your loved one drops one drop of strychnine? I said, you'd be dead. He goes, that's right. Life is both sugar and strychnine, so watch your coffee. His whole thing was stand guard at the door of your brain. But some people take that and go, oh my God, you can kill me. It was a metaphor. These people are not so toxic. They're toxic because you give them energy. So if your mom's crazy and constantly criticizing you and it drives you nuts, just go, that's my mom. That's her way of showing love. And I find a new perspective. And no matter what she does, just stay in a beautiful state and love on her and think, boy, think of all that she cares and feels for, all that she's frustrated in life, or all that she's going through that's made her this way. And think, I don't have to go through this. I can love her. It's like your growth is the only limit to your happiness. If you're not happy, you're not growing in some area. And usually it's a place where you're blaming, you're pointing the finger. I don't care if it's government, don't get me wrong. People can be unfair, unjust, that's for sure happens. But you can't control that. You can't make it not happen. What you have to do is become stronger than any of it so you're free. Freedom comes from growth. Freedom does not come from control. Because control is an illusion. You can't control everybody. No matter how hard you try, you can't control what they think or feel. And not everybody's going to be fair and just. And you, my dear friends, and I have not always been fair and just. Whether we admit it or not, it's just the nature of being, a human being. Mm-hmm. But we can make the largest pattern fair and just and loving and powerful and serving and growing until it becomes the dominant thing inside you. And then you experience life as being great, not you're great. Life's great because you're living a great path.
It seems like what I'm seeing and hearing from a lot of people that this past year, everything has fallen apart for them. Their health, their relationships, their finances, their mission or purpose, and their spiritual awareness, like every area of life has been in breakdown mode for some people. Well, not everyone. Some people have had incredible lives and have stepped up to the occasion and broken through on all these things. But I'm seeing a pattern of a lot of people breaking down in many areas. Hypothetical scenario, let's say you could only focus on one thing to get you started. You only had the time and energy to focus on one of these areas. Your health, your relationships are all breaking down. Your finances, you're failing everywhere. Where should people lean into first to kind of create that foundation so that everything else can start to rise as well?
I think before you answer what to do, you got to answer why you're there. But my core mission is what I do for a living. It's why I'm here talking to you right now. It's getting people to be free and alive and have the level of fulfillment that they deserve to have. I know they desire, but I also believe they deserve to have. But to deserve to have it, you got to do certain things, right? And so you're not in the place of being overweight because you lost your job. So stop the bullshit Blame is not a strategy for a meaningful life. Blame is not a strategy for greatness. So you got to resolve that, number one. And then your question was, what's the one thing to focus on if you only focus on one? I think it's smart to focus on one thing primarily. Focus on too many can be overwhelming. Other people, it's good to focus on multiple things. It depends on your personality. So I wouldn't presuppose. But then the answer would be whichever thing you're most desirous of changing, whatever thing is giving you the most pain. So if it's your relationship, I'd go full force on that. Now, in the world we're in today, you don't usually have the privilege of going, okay, I want to work on just being happy. Well, I can train you to be happy while breaking loose. You can sit in this chair and be totally euphoric. But if you do that in a Western culture, people come and take your furniture, right? So you probably have to work on both your business or financial side and some personal side. I would be working on both. And to me, the way to attack that, if you're not sure which area, is to start with the body. And I know you can relate to this, Lewis, because you and I both share this in common. It's like, I always teach physiology first, as you well know. If you change the body, you'll change the emotions. If you change the emotions, you'll change your decisions, you'll change the quality of your life. Because the quality of your life is your emotions. It's not what you get. You can have $1 billion and commit suicide. People have done it, right? You can have beautiful relationships and commit suicide. You can have people loving you and be sad all the time. Our pattern of emotion is our home. And you have to upgrade your home. You have to train it. And one way to train it is the emotion comes from the way you move, the way you breathe, the way you speak. So if I said to your listeners, there's a depressed person behind the curtain over here, and I'll give $100,000 to their favorite charity if they had to describe their body, their posture, and they're depressed, you tell me. I'll just use the example. What does that person look like?
They're slunched down. They're looking down at their feet. They're not looking upward. Their shoulders are over.
Are they breathing full or shallow, do you think?
They're shallow.
Are they talking fast or slow?
They're talking, if they're depressed, they're probably talking fast because they're not calm.
Well, no, that's usually stressed. Depressed is different than stressed.
They're slow. They're probably talking low volume, slower than.
And all those physical characteristics change your biochemistry towards this feeling of being depressed. And in a depressed state, you won't do anything. When I used to be depressed, and I don't get it anymore, I just took it out of my life. I even took the language of it out of my life. Because the words you create a biochemical response. But when I did that decades ago, because I was like having those thoughts like, is there a reason to still be here? That kind of crazy shit in your head. I got out of it by using anger originally. I'd much like sometimes if somebody's really sad or depressed, I'll make them angry. And people are like, what's he doing? He's making them angry. Because angry is much more resourceful than depressed. From anger, I can get you to laughter. I can get you to taking action. And then gradually I got where I didn't need anger. It was about growth. It was about contribution. It was about meaning. So there's like stages to go through. But to answer your question, they should work on both their business side of their life and personal, one of each. And in order for either one of those to work, you need to be in a strong emotional state. And if you start with your body, like I start every morning in my cold water, start every morning with my workout. I started every morning on feeding my mind, right? So there's certain things you got to do physically so you're strong enough to remember the truth. Because remember, fear is physical. You feel it in your throat or your gut. So is courage. Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It just means you're strong enough you push through in spite of the fear, right? And courage feels different in the body. So when you go lift or you go for a sprint or a strong run or you jump in that freezing water, when you push your mind to go beyond what's comfortable, you feel a strength inside you, and that strength will help you to change your body, your emotions, your relationships, whatever. But then the other thing I gotta say is model someone who's successful. Don't just do this shit by trial and error. Like, find somebody who has what you want. Ideally, maybe more than one person, 2 or 3, and figure out what are they doing different than you in their relationship? What do they believe different than you about relationship? If it's their body, what are they doing different? They're not lucky. They're doing things differently. You might be slightly biochemically different, but there's patterns there that you can see. And so instead of learning by trial and error, which can take decades you may never learn, Jim Rohn taught me success leaves clues, man. Find someone's got what you want, study what they do, every aspect of it, and then add yourself to it. And that's the pathway to speed of transformation. So now, I've done it. I'm not the only person. There's so many companies that went from worse off than they'd ever been in their history to the best off because they found a way to pivot.
If people are listening to this, watching this, thinking about how they can transform their lives and better their lives, what's something over the next 7 days that they should be thinking about with their habits to make this happen?
Yeah, great question. I don't even think it needs to be 7 days. I think it'd be 5 minutes. You can do a lot with 5 good minutes. Like 5 good minutes of exercise will reset your mood.
5 good minutes of writing will make you feel totally different about your manuscript. It's like now the project's moving forward. 5 good minutes of conversation will restore the relationship and, get people back on track. So 5 good minutes can do a lot. And I think you can scale it down that small and just ask yourself, how can I live 5 good minutes? How can I, like, in a sense, each day is a small lifetime. And how can you live a good life today? That's really all you got to focus on is, can I have a good day today? And then you can wake up again tomorrow and do the same thing. And this idea of getting 1% better each day, it's really encouraging a focus on trajectory rather than position. There's so much discussion about position in life. We have all these different ways of measuring our current position. Like, what's the number on the scale? How much money's in the bank account? What's the current stock price? We have all these different ways of analyzing what our current position is. And then usually when we get that number, whatever it is, there's kind of some sort of judgment that happens. It's, I'm not where I said I wanted to be yet, or we haven't achieved what we said we wanted to achieve. And what I'm encouraging is to say, listen, measurement's fine. It can be useful, but just for a minute, let's set that to the side and stop worrying so much about our current position and focus a little bit more on our current trajectory. Is the arrow pointed up and to the right, or have we flatlined? Are we getting 1% better or 1% worse? Because if you're on a good trajectory, even if it's just for the next 5 minutes, then you're on the path where all you need is time. Like, time will magnify whatever you feed it. If you have good habits, time becomes your ally, and that trajectory will carry you forward. And if you have bad habits, time becomes your enemy. And every day that goes by, you kind of dig the hole a little bit deeper. And so getting 1% better each day, it's really a mindset. It's an approach. It's less about measuring it. Oh, is it 1% or 1.6% or whatever? Like, it's not about getting caught up in the numbers. It's about trying to focus on putting yourself on a good path and then letting those days stack up.
In your opinion, why do you think so many people have the habit of being hard on themselves, even when they're improving and seeing the metrics go up on whatever they're measuring?
I mean, it can probably be many different things. And I don't know all the answers. I think one thing that's common is that the results of success are widely discussed and highly visible. And the process of success is often invisible and hidden from view. Like, you'll never see a news story that's like, man eats chicken and salad for lunch today. It's only a story once it's like, man loses 100 pounds. It's only once it's a result that people talk about it. Or like, there's never going to be a story about James writes 500 words today. It's like only a story once. Atomic Habits is a bestseller. And so because the results are the thing that gets discussed so much, and it's not, by the way, it's not that results don't matter. Like, I consider myself pretty results oriented. It's just that I think we tend to overvalue outcomes because it's all we ever talk about. And we undervalue the process because it's not compelling to talk about what's going on a daily basis. So because of all that, I think it can get easy to judge yourself. You could be doing the right thing on any given day. Like, I could sit down and I could write 500 words, and that's actually a really good day, But if the manuscript's still a mess and I'm still a year and a half away from the book coming out, and I'm seeing somebody else launch a bestseller this week, then you start to judge yourself and feel like, oh, they have what I want to have, or I'm not there yet, or this is still a mess. I've been working on it for months. Like, this is never going to get finished. It's very easy to fall into that kind of mindset. And especially if you're focused on results. So I think the shift is partially, it just helps to know that working on habits day in and day out, focusing on building a better process and building a better system is how results occur. And that is very obvious to all of us as soon as you say it, but man, it's so easy to forget it on a daily basis. And so reminding yourself that most of your results in life are a lagging measure of the habits that precede them. So your bank account is a lagging measure of your financial habits. Your physical fitness is the lagging measure of your exercise habits. Your even like silly stuff like the amount of clutter in your living room is a lagging measure of your cleaning habits. So many areas of life are largely, maybe not exclusively, but largely influenced by the habits that precede them. And so if you want better outcomes, the thing to focus on is building better habits. And for some reason, we get into this mindset where we're focused on results and we naturally start to compare. And that leads to feelings of judgment, resentment, and negativity, and so on. And if we can just shift it a little bit and just try to focus on having 5 good minutes or living a good day or building better habits, then I think maybe you pull yourself back in the present moment You focus a little bit more on running your own race and maybe a little bit less on what everybody else is doing.
Love that, man. Focus on your own race. Over 10 million copies sold of Atomic Habits. If there is anyone who hasn't got this yet, you guys got to make sure you get this. But I'm curious, for those who haven't got it yet and don't know, how long does it take to form a habit? There seems like there's all this different research. This university says this, and this scientific study says this. How long does it take to actually form a habit? And is it dependent on what habit you're trying to create? And are there also are there different stages of building and forming a habit?
That's interesting. The stages part's interesting. People don't usually ask that. Okay, so very popular question. How long does it take to build a habit? It does depend on the habit you're building. So there are a variety of studies that show, if you pick an easy habit, it might only take a couple weeks. If you pick something really difficult, maybe it takes 6 or 7 or 8 months, who knows? But it also depends, like the same habit can take very different amounts of time depending on the context. Imagine one person who's trying to build the habit of doing yoga every day, and they live with a bunch of athletes or people who go to yoga studios or whatever. And then the other person is trying to build a habit of doing yoga every day, and they live with nobody who works out, and they kind of get criticized or poked fun at if they do it in front of them. Well, same habit, but very different situations. And so the environment's going to influence how much friction you're feeling associated with that. And obviously that will influence how easy or difficult it is. So I don't really know that the timing tells you anything. There's all these kind of popular myths, 21 days or 30 days or whatever, and there's not really anything to back that up. But there's also a couple studies that say on average, it's like 66 days or something like that. But again, the range can be quite wide depending on the habit. So I think the true answer, the honest answer to how long does it take to build a habit is forever. Because if you stop doing it, it's no longer a habit, and what I'm trying to get at with that is habits are not a finish line to be crossed. They're a lifestyle to be lived. It's something to integrate into your new normal. It's not like, hey, let me just do this for 30 days or 66 days, and then I'll be a healthy person, or then I'll be productive or whatever. I won't have to think about it anymore. It's like, no, like what we're looking for is a change that you can integrate into your new normal, something you can make part of your lifestyle. And then once it's part of your daily life, great, you can start to look at the next habit and try to integrate that one. And it's kind of this endless process. And maybe that encourages you a little bit more to look for a non-threatening change or a sustainable change rather than just trying to flip a switch.
Yeah. And it also sounds like a habit is only a habit, and correct me if I'm wrong, if it becomes and is your identity on a consistent basis. And if it's not your identity, then you're not doing it if it's not your identity.
I don't think most researchers would define it that way, but it speaks to this question you asked about stages. And that was kind of the first thing that I thought about when you mentioned that question. So like, let's say, for example, let's just take like a classic habit, like going to the gym and working out. So early on, going to the gym's kind of uncomfortable. You're worried about like, are people judging me? Do I look stupid? I don't know what exercises to do. Like I don't know where to put my stuff. Do they have a water fountain at this gym, or do I need to bring a water bottle? There's like all these like stupid little questions that you're thinking about when you're getting started. And it's definitely not part of your identity. You haven't shown up enough to be comfortable there and feel like, hey, this is just part of who I am. And so early on, the kind of the first stage when you're practicing it, I think the number one thing you need to do is scale it down, reduce the scope, and try to make it as easy and as frictionless as possible to show up each day. So that's probably like stage one, is how do I make this?
It's the opposite of what people try to do when they're like, I'm out of shape, I'm going to go every day for the next year, and I'm not going to miss a day, and I'm going to eat chicken and salad every day.
Well, and what's interesting is, especially for ambitious people, it's really interesting or really easy to fall into that pitfall. Because when you sit down and you think about the changes you want to make, yeah, it's easy to get excited about that. I think implicitly you kind of, even though people don't say it, what the thing that's kind of in the back of their mind is, what can I achieve on my best day? Like, how could I get to peak performance, And instead, I almost think it's more useful to ask yourself, what can I achieve even on the worst days? Like what habit could I stick to even on the bad days? Because then if you start there, now you can start to build some momentum. You can show up consistently. You can establish the habit. So that's maybe the first stage, is scale it down. The second stage is you start to get some like other rewards associated with it. So you've been going to the gym for a few months, and then maybe you start to see a little bit of a change in your body, Or maybe you start to develop some friendships there and you look forward to seeing your new buddy there and you guys fist bump and you chat a little bit. And it's just like kind of more engaging and fun to do it, to go there and, work out. And so these are like other benefits, things that make the habit feel good, and they kind of help you show up more and more. So you're starting to get these external benefits that are coming along the way. And then ultimately, the maybe the final stage or a later stage is now it feels like it's kind of part of my identity. I go like, this is where I would say, so I've been working out for a while now, and it's probably like the habit that I care most about, like in terms of personal habits. It's the one that feels like it centers me, or it's the only time I really get for myself. And so I want to work out now. Yes, of course, I want the benefits of it and the physical changes and all that stuff. But what I really want is I just feel good when I do it. I feel like I'm being me. I'm being the kind of person I want to be. And it makes me feel like, yeah, this is the identity I want to have. This is the kind of person I want to be. And so I can get that satisfaction instantly. Like as long as I'm doing one rep, I get that feeling. And so that's a reward that comes maybe later. You got to show up a lot before you get to that place mentally. But I think ultimately that's where you're trying to get to. Now there is maybe one more stage after that, which is the tighter that you cling to your current identity, the harder it becomes to grow beyond it. And so this is kind of an endless process, we all can sort of think about like, let's say you have a surgeon who they've been doing an operation a certain way for the last 20 years, and they have a bunch of successful patients and cases from that operation. And they just are like, yeah, you know what? I know it works well this way.
And this
and
is how
then
we do
a new
things,
technology,
it's always been this way. Yeah.
Yeah. A new technology comes along. And they're like, hey, you can do this with robots now, or you can do it laparoscopically or whatever. And they resist it because they're like, no, I have a lot of evidence for doing it my old way. They cling to that current identity, and it's harder to grow. And 5 years from now, they find themselves behind the curve. Or you've got a teacher who they've been doing their lesson plan the same way for the last 10 years, and they don't want to integrate YouTube or some new learning modality or whatever. And 5 years from now, they find themselves behind the curve. And so the tighter you cling to your current identity, the harder it becomes to grow beyond it. And it's kind of this endless cycle. In the early stages, what you want is to foster the identity, to like reinforce being that kind of person because it helps you show up. But then eventually, a couple of years from now, the world changes and you need to adapt. And so it's kind of like evolve or die. And you need to continually be retouching or optimizing or refining that identity in your approach. And so there are some various stages there, but those are kind of some of the big ones that stuck out to me.
Yeah, and it's like people who are stuck to whatever fax machines, and then it's from faxing to email, and then email to cell phones, and then whatever it is. It's like our grandparents don't keep up with the technology, and then we can't call them on FaceTime because they don't know how to turn it on or whatever. So that's interesting. It sounds like there's different stages to these habits, and it sounds like when you become successful, the habits that got you here may not necessarily get you to the next stage or season of accomplishment, fulfillment, success, health. Is that right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I would say there's kind of like two categories. There are habits that are like timeless and we call those the fundamentals of whatever your domain is. Like in my case, reading and writing are probably always going to be habits that will serve me as an author, but then there's other stuff, the way that I executed the book launch for Atomic Habits. You know what? Like if I launch another book in 10 years, a lot of those strategies will probably be outdated. And so you need to upgrade and improve. You need to evolve and change. And so there's both the fundamentals that you always need to stick to, and there's just this continual growth and learning process that you also have to be committed to.
What is the difference between a habit and a behavior, and which one should we be focusing on more in order to get to where we want to be? Changing our behaviors or changing our habits?
A habit is a subset of behavior. It's a pretty narrow subset, actually, if you look at the like true scientific definition. So Wendy Wood of University of Southern California is I think the world's expert on habit, and she would define it pretty rigidly as something you basically do automatically without almost consciously realizing you're doing it, right? Like you sort of make the coffee in the morning with the coffee maker, you hit the buttons, you don't even remember.
You're just like
you shampoo your hair, right? And you're like, did I do the shampoo already? I was thinking about something else.
You drove to work and you don't know how you got there. You're like, what?
Because you're on autopilot, right? So that's like, those are the really rote activities, like you hand sanitize if you're working in a hospital and you didn't even notice you did it. Did I do that already? Those are habits. I think there's been a lot of excitement and growth of like in the popular press, the idea that a habit is anything that you want to repeat. And I think that would actually, a lot of the things that we think of and that we talk about casually as habits are probably more in the category of routines, which is different. Like often it's like if you're going to the gym, is it really a habit? You probably remember deciding to go to the gym. Maybe you do it at a consistent time. Maybe you do it a lot. But I would start calling a lot of these things more like routines if you want to talk about the non-academic. At any rate,
Sure.
You know, a little bit like inside baseball, who cares? But I do think it's interesting there's distinction in the processes that drive one versus the other. I study behavior, which is like a super category. It's even above routines or habits where and it's just all behavior change requires different behaviors to happen. Some of them are going to be on autopilot, some of them are going to be routine, and some of them are one-time decisions that have big implications for your life. So I actually think having all of those categories in mind when we think about change is really important, as opposed to narrowly focusing on one or the other.
So what is the definition of a behavior?
Oh, that's an interesting, like, what is a behavior? A behavior is an action you take. Like really everything is behavior. If it's inside your head, it's not a behavior, then it's like a judgment. But any actual action you take is a behavior. Any
action you take. So what are the most common behaviors that we have that I guess hold us back? And then what are the behaviors that
Okay, I thought you were going to go with most common. I was like, breathing.
No, the most common behaviors that hold us back.
Yeah.
And then the most common behaviors of the ultra high performers, successful, you know, in business and sports, what are those behaviors that they tend to lean into?
Oh, that's so
versus the ones where people are stuck?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm trying to ask you questions you've never been asked here.
They're great. They're great. They're really great questions. Okay. Let me start with some of the most common behaviors
that keep us stuck. Yes.
Yeah, I think common behaviors where we get stuck are, and this is like, you know, what are the most common New Year's resolutions? They're to change those behaviors that we get stuck on. So the most common things we get stuck on are things related to our health, right? We aren't making good decisions about what we eat, what we drink, whether we smoke, whether we're physically active. Those are really common points where we get stuck. Our finances, right? Making good financial decisions on a daily basis about how we spend our money, how we save, who we give our money to. Those are places people often get stuck. We can get stuck in bad social loops. We sort of started by talking about relationships, so I think that's another place we get stuck. Whether it's we feel like we're too shy, we're not meeting enough people, we're meeting the wrong people, we're in the wrong relationships. That's another area where we get stuck. I think education and career are sort of, I'd put them, because they're like one follows the other, and that's another category. Like if you're a student and you're trying to achieve, but we often get stuck on not really studying rigorously and you know, putting the time in and the focus in, and then that converts to work where we're not being as productive as we could be. We're not setting ourselves up for success.
Ultra performers, or the elite who are accomplishing all their goals and pursuing their dreams, what are those behaviors that they do really well?
So I have never gone and interviewed the ultra performers and said, like, list for me all your behaviors. So instead of answering your question perfectly, what I'm going to do is tell you some of the behaviors that research shows lead to great outcomes.
Yes.
And then certainly I have seen lots of top performers where I go, oh, they're totally doing that. Yeah. It's great. So I think one of the most important things is like leaning on structure as opposed to expecting to just sort of follow the Nike just do it mantra. And by the way, when you talked about how you're training for your marathon, I noticed you immediately went to all the structures.
Schedule, structure, accountability, coaching, investing like money into it all, so there's more investment in it. So it's like you've got to show up.
Yes.
That is like, for me, it's so ingrained in me that if you want to accomplish your goals, you got to schedule these things you got to do on a daily basis and make it like.
Break it down. What's the daily goal?
What's the daily
When
thing?
are you going to do it? What's going to cue you to do it? Who's going to watch you do it?
Everything.
What's
at stake for you? What's at stake for other people? What's the higher purpose that if you don't do this, who are you going to be hurting?
And who is literally holding you accountable,
Absolutely.
right? You've got your coach involved. So those are the kinds of things.
So structure is one of the leading academic, the research that shows which will help you get more results.
Yes, and there's so many pieces of that, and like each one of them we could unpack and talk about
Please break it
studies
down.
from, okay, a big one is too often people say, I just have this big goal, this big, I think if I set a big audacious goal, and that, by the way, that's good. It's good to set stretch goals, but then you got to break it down, like into the, what are you going to do this week? What are you going to do today? What are those component parts? And people get a lot further. Research by Al Bandura, the late Al Bandura of Stanford, great thinker, sort of did some of the pioneering work on this. We just did a field experiment where we tested with thousands of people who wanted to be volunteering 200 hours a year, and they had committed to that goal. And we found that just sending them reminders not to volunteer 200 hours a year, but to volunteer 4 hours a week led to vastly better performance. Just that really simple change, even in the way you communicate about this. When you invite someone to start saving $5 a day instead of $150 a month, you get vastly higher take-up.
Interesting.
But it's identical. So just little framing shifts where you think about, let's break this down into the bite-sized component. Now it's harder to procrastinate on it. You can see how it's doable. It doesn't feel overwhelming.
So you're saying if my goal is to save $105 or invest $105 a month or whatever this is, are you saying it's not the best approach to say I'm going to invest $105 a month, but I'm going to do $5 a day?
Yeah, so 100. I
can't remember what this.
Yeah, it's 150 because it's like 30 days roughly in a month. Anyway.
$150 as opposed to saying I'm going to save or invest $150 a month. Trick your brain into saying I'm going to invest $5 a day.
Right.
You're saying by doing that, what should happen? We should have
many more people raise their hand and say, I can do this.
As opposed to $150 is too big for some people.
It sounds big. You start thinking like, oh no, where am I going to have to cut? Like that's a bit, like I'm not going to get to go out to dinner 3 times that I thought I was going to get to go out to, am I going to make my rent? So you're like focusing on that big category, $150. And this was an experiment that was done, led by Hal Hirschfeld at UCLA with a savings app, Acorns. And they just invited people, either some people get randomly assigned, do you want to save $5 a day? Or $150 a month. It's literally the identical outcome. They will take $150 out of your account
monthly.
Yeah,
but
but they framed it differently, and you get vastly higher take-up.
Really?
Something like 5 times more people are interested.
Way.
It just feels doable.
Yes.
And
I mean, it's like anyone can find $5 in their couch or like car, like the change. It's like, oh, I can do this every day, but $150 may be like a big stretch.
Right, but it is the same thing. And so that broken down goal is really important.
So it's like if you're working out, as opposed to saying, I'm going to run, 50 miles a week, it's like, that may seem like a lot, but I can run, what is that broken down to? 4 miles a day, 4 miles a day, 5 miles a day. It's more doable than thinking about the big number, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. How could you apply that in another area of life, do you think? In terms of like fitness, in terms of finances, and what about like relationships? I don't know, is there...
I think you can break down most big goals into its component parts. It might not be as simple as like literally redoing the math, but it might be, I want to have a better relationship and I want us to spend more quality time together. Let's try to spend a lot more quality time together this year. Well, first you can get more concrete, right, than a lot of. And so say you had a monthly goal, it might be like, okay, I want to make sure that we go on, 5 just us dates a month to have that alone time. And you might say that means, every Friday plus 1 Saturday, we're going to do it. And that means, once a week plus 1 week that has 2 times. And let's go map out when they are. It all becomes more bite-sized and achievable. And this is, again, you said you're like mapping out your schedules. These are the component parts that actually add up to achieving your goals.
And I would think of like, okay, what am I going to do this week? What am I going to schedule this week? Not like I've got all this stuff to do for the next 3 months. Like, what can I do for the next few days? And what's coming tomorrow? And then, okay, I see the full week and how am I going to manage my time? And at the end of the week, wow, I can look at what I created and I can be proud of it and build for the next week.
Yeah. So that's really important.
Yeah, and time's going to keep passing. And in 3 months, you're going to look back and say, oh, look at all the steps I took to get to me where I'm at.
Absolutely.
Winning the LA Marathon. No, I'm just kidding.
Completing
is the goal. Completing in 5 hours is my goal. Okay, so that's
breaking
leading
down
on structure.
Let me add another super important strategy that I think a lot of high performers use that research supports. And this one I think is vastly underappreciated too, and it sort of relates to what I was poking at earlier, like the just do it Nike, like, no, that's not really right. I think this is really a misconception that's related to that. And this, the idea comes from research by Ayelet Fishbach of the University of Chicago and Caitlin Woolley of Cornell. And what they showed is that if you ask people when they have a big goal, what approach are they going to take to try to get to it? Most people say, like, I'm going to look for the most efficient route. It's all about efficiency. What's the most effective path to that end goal? That's how I go for it. And like a small fraction of people say something different. They say, I try to find a way that I'll enjoy getting to that end destination.
Have fun.
Have fun. So you could think about someone who wants to, we've been on marathons, say you're training for a marathon, somebody who's like, I'm going to just go to the gym and get on the on the treadmill and grind it out.
It's hard every day.
Yeah. And another person is like, I'm going to go on a run with a running group. We're going to go through, the most beautiful trails that I know. We're going to do it together. Maybe I'm even going to download some great reading material, listening material before I go so that I have something fun in my ears. Those are really different paths, right? Like this one might be more efficient because you don't have to coordinate with other people. You'll do it every day. You're going to know exactly your mileage. It's going to be really controlled.
Yes.
But it turns out if you don't enjoy it, you don't persist. And so they've done experiments where they show that if you just actually encourage people to choose the most fun way to pursue an exercise goal or study, they did this with students in math class, giving them fun activities that were sort of going on in the background. You can use markers and play music and have snacks versus just grind it out. People achieve more because they persist longer when they find ways to make it fun to do.
That's crazy.
What's good for them. But we misunderstand this. We don't think we need that. We sort of think like, oh, that's kids stuff. Like, I'm just going to push through. And we're wrong. We won't, ultimately. And that's because of impulsivity, because we overvalue the present experience relative to the long-term gains. It's just how we're wired.
What's the greatest lesson you learned in the last year of working these two jobs? As you transition out of this job, what was the greatest lesson of overworking what it sounds like you were doing?
That success does not equal happiness.
Ooh.
I remember when, I think it was 3 years ago, I had signed my highest draft pick ever. I had won Woman of the Year, and had a #1 overall pick in softball. I had all these amazing things happening, made more money than I've ever made. And I remember looking back, I had made a birthday post actually, oh, here's all the great things I did this year. I remember being like, man, this is the least happy I've ever been. And so I think I learned really quickly that success and happiness, people try to conflate those terms, are very different. You can be successful and not be happy. And so for me, the milestones don't make me happy. I'm very much a journey girl, right? The journey, it's all about, I want to get there, I want to get there. When I finally hit the goal, it's real anticlimactic for me. It's almost depressing. It's like, okay, I did it, now what? So it was really a wake-up call. And what I'm trying to do is learn how to be present in the moment when I hit the goal, be okay with okay, I hit the goal, let's celebrate it. Instead of it going, kind of being well, what's next? Taking a moment to really take it in.
Celebrating the success and the accomplishment of the years of hard work is so important.
It is. But for me, it's always, okay, well, what's the next goal? What's the next step? And that's unhealthy.
Right.
You need to be able to be okay with celebrating what you've done and taking a moment to live in that moment before going to the next. Yeah,
I think success doesn't equal happiness, but I think you can still be happy and successful at the same time. You can,
exactly. But it doesn't, it's different, and people think once I hit success, then I will be happy. You've got to find happiness separately.
Before you become successful, be happy, and success will add to it. It's more fun.
Exactly. It's really joy, right? Happiness is about what's happening. Joy is eternal.
How much joy do you feel on a daily basis?
It's something I'm working on. It's something I'm working on. I feel it, but my mom, I watch her. She doesn't have much. She never had much, but she's always just so joyful, right? She doesn't have 2 pennies to rub together, but there's no one I've met who just is happier to be alive than her. And so, I look at her and I'm like, she doesn't have anything, and I have everything in her mind.
Interesting.
And our outlooks on life are just so different, and so, it's something I'm working on. It's not like I'm not happy all day.
Right. What's the greatest lesson your mom's taught you?
She instilled my faith. I'm really blessed to have learned about Jesus from my mom. She gave me nothing else except, how to worship Jesus and how to be a giver. Those are the 2 things, but I feel like they were the most important gifts of my life.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What about greatest lesson from your dad?
That's a tough one. He's an immigrant. You know, he came over here with nothing and, you know, had to hustle. He definitely taught me you have to survive. You know, you gotta, no matter what the circumstances are, he kind of taught me to survive. You know, I knew how to survive as a kid. I think now that I'm older, I'm trying to go from surviving to thriving. You know, stop living in a survival mode, because I can do that. I can do that well. Learned how to do that.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, now how about thriving?
Yeah.
And like you said, living in abundance and being okay with spending your money and enjoying the moment.
An influencer
No,
or
I'm
a
just a
content
human.
creator, you were like working at a law firm and then, you know, like representing other personal brands, essentially,
Yeah.
other athletes and influencers. So how did you learn to build your own personal brand, and why is it important for every individual to build their personal brand, whether in a corporation or not?
Actually, I have a whole chapter on this in my book about building a brand. I believe every professional is a brand, lawyers, doctors, etc. I think we always look at entrepreneurs and influencers as the people that have brands. Once I learned that we're all brands, it really changed my career. You know, I decided to build a brand because I wanted to get athletes to come to me. I didn't have time to recruit like other agents because I had another job. And so I had to get creative, and I thought, okay, if I have a brand where I'm a household name, where when somebody thinks of a sports agent, I'm the first name or one of the first names that comes to mind, then I've done it right.
How'd you do that?
Man, it starts with picking out your pillars of your brand, right? I think every brand has a few pillars, and everything you do falls under those pillars. Like for me, it's sports, and it's women empowerment and mentorship. And so when I'm posting on my social media or on my website, anything that is on that page is under one of my pillars.
Yeah.
And so finding what that brand kind of parameters are and then being consistent with it. You know, your followers and your fans, they sign up for something, giving them what they signed up for.
When did you start really going all in on kind of content and building a brand online?
I would say it's been about 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
When I first started. You know, it was a slow start, but I remember making a decision like, I'm going to be the first agent everyone thinks of. I'm going to make a decision. Like, it was very intentional. I'm about to build a brand as a sports agent, and it has not been done. And I think most people probably know of Jerry Maguire, the fictitious agent, and maybe 1 or 2 agents, but you can't name a sports agent just naturally.
Right.
And so I made the decision. I said, you know what? When people think of that, they're going to think of me.
That's cool.
But everyone should feel that way. If you're a baker, you want people to think of you first if they need a cake.
And do you think of like, okay, there's, I don't know, 20,000 sports agents. I'm just making up.
Yeah.
How many are there? I don't know.
900 NFL agents.
Oh, 900
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, I'm way off. But there's 1,000, let's say, agents. How do you think of like, I'm going to lean into my uniqueness, like use the differences or the uniqueness and the talents that I have and not try to be like the other agents, but just go all in obnoxiously on who I am? Is that what you think of?
100%.
So you stand out, yeah.
Living in my authentic self every single day.
Yeah.
I decided to show up exactly who I am every day. You know, and I think I wouldn't be on this podcast. I wouldn't have a book if I didn't make that decision day one that I was going to be me.
Right.
You know, I got a lot of advice early on to blend in, and I was like, you know what? I'm not taking that advice. I'm going to be who I am.
Yeah. There's a quote from a woman named Sally Hogshead who says, different is better than better. And being different is better than better, because you're going to be unique, you're going to be stand out, you're going to be a one of a kind, and you may not be better than the best sports agent at this moment, but you're different, and that's better for you than being better.
I agree.
And I think if people can approach that and say, what makes me unique and how can I lean into that more and more? Like for me, I'm a big salsa dancer, and I wasn't posting salsa stuff until recently. And it's getting the most engagement and comments, and people are like, post more of this.
Yep.
You know, playing guitar with my brother, who's an amazing jazz violinist, and they're like, post more of this. It's like, these are unique things for me that I haven't always shared, and I'm trying to lean into it more and more, and I think that's
You are the
good
secret
advice.
sauce.
Exactly. No one else can do the talents that you have, the experience you have, the life you grew up from, the lessons, the whatever.
Even if you give them the recipe. If I give you my spaghetti recipe, the exact instructions, your sauce is still going to taste different.
Different.
I'm the secret sauce. You're the secret sauce. Yeah.
Exactly. And people are going to be attracted to you. I love this. What's a question you wish more people would ask you that they don't ask?
Oh, man, that's a good question. What do I wish they asked me but that they don't ask? How are you? How are you feeling?
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling okay. I'm a little tired. I get a lot of questions about how to get in the business, and like when I meet people, how to be a sports agent, and I think people forget, like, hey, I'm a human, and more of the like checking in, like, how are you doing? Like, where, how's your mental health? How's your physical health? How's Nicole Lynn doing? Not Agent Nicole Lynn. How's Nicole Lynn doing?
Personal Nicole Lynn,
Yeah, so I think people kind of forget about that. I'd say that.
That's what I'm going to do over the next 30 days.
Every day. How are you?
Once a week. No, once a week. Once a week, I'm going to check in with you. We're going to create a list.
Oh my gosh.
Just send it to you.
August 1st.
August 1st. Yeah, we'll give it to August 1st, the start of the month.
Gotta have the August one. You can't start it.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll do that August 1st. I'm going to text you.
I can do it.
Every week. I'm going to have you text me on the weekends when you've completed the week.
Okay.
I'm going to check in on you for 4 weeks. And see
I'm going to be like
at
an NFL training camp, and I'm going to be working out in the hotel, I guess.
Work out with the guys, It's just like, I'll jump in there. Exactly.
Kill them. I
love this. You've got this book we've been talking about called Agent You. Show up, do the work, and succeed in your own terms. People can get it online. They can go to bookstores. Where's a place they can connect with you personally? And where's the website for more about you?
AgentNicoleLynn.com or Agent Nicole Lynn on Twitter, Instagram.
Where do you hang out more? Twitter, Instagram, or both?
I'd say both. Twitter, it's heavy sports. So if you like sports, Instagram, you'll get mostly sports, but, mentorship. I like to post kind of the blueprint of how I am a sports agent.
That's cool.
If you ever want to get into sports, I put all the tips on my page.
That's cool. Yeah, it's fun. And I see my guy Emmanuel and Sarah both on the back praising for you, both friends of mine, so it's inspiring to see.
Gabrielle Union wrote the foreword.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Where's her name on here?
I know. You
got to put her name on the front.
I
know. What I'm saying? Forward by Gabby Union.
Yeah.
You got to leverage that. That's good. Yeah. Good marketing. This is a question I ask everyone at the end of our interviews called the 3 truths question. So I'd like you to imagine a hypothetical scenario.
Okay.
It's your last day on Earth many years away from now.
It's really sad.
It is.
It's the most depressing
No,
of my life.
You've lived as long as you want to live.
Okay, 200 years.
Perfect. You lived 200?
Clearly.
And then it's your last day.
Okay.
Eventually you got to call it quits, right?
Okay.
On this life. And you've accomplished all your dreams. You've lived the life that you want to live. You do self-care every day. You're helping athletes. You're doing all these things. Whatever your dream life is, you actually create it.
Okay.
From here until whenever you pass. But for whatever reason, you've got to take all of your materials with you, or it's got to go somewhere else. So your book, your content, the things you've said, no one has access to this anymore. It goes to the next place, somewhere else. But you get a piece of paper and a pen, and you get to write down 3 things you know to be true, 3 lessons. And this is all we would have to be reminded of you from all of your work and all of your material, of these 3 lessons that you would share with the world.
Wow.
That they would have to use in whatever they wanted to use. What would you say are those 3 truths for you?
God is real.
Mm-hmm.
The second truth is that finding your purpose is the most important mission of your life. And the third, marry the right person. Marry the right person.
Man. Why does that seem to be so hard for so many people?
It's tough. People are always like, how are you so successful? What's the number one thing you can tell me to do? Marry the right person. I couldn't do what I do if I had married someone else.
It would be draining.
Yeah, it's a support system. You're a team. It's a partnership. Mm-hmm. And that partnership is critical to your success. But that's a whole nother book.
Right. How long have you been married for?
9 years.
How did you know that it was the right person?
Man, I just knew. Isn't that crazy? I just knew. I was one of those, we dated for like 10 months and then we're married.
Wow.
I'm one of those stories. It's like, we dated and like 6 weeks in, it's like, I guess you're probably my husband. I think you are. And just here we are. People thought we were nuts. We're going now on our 10th year.
Wow.
So I was like, I think it worked out.
What's been the key to knowing it's a great fit or it's aligned, and then the key to also sustaining it and making sure it stays that way after 10 years?
The sustaining is that love is not enough.
Gosh, I've been saying that so much lately. Love is not enough.
At all. And you have to make a decision every day to stay married.
Wow.
Marriage is very hard. People don't talk about that. People like to make it look like it's all roses, and it's hard. You show up every day. It's like going to work every single day and choosing to love someone.
Wow.
It's an action. But yeah, love is not enough. Compatibility, chemistry. There's so many different factors here that are important. Mm-hmm. And I wish I could say it's just all about love, and it's not. It's BS.
You guys had all that other stuff, though. You had
some of it grew over time.
Right.
We're very different. Some of it grew over time. Some of it was we're very different in these things, and we've got to learn how to live with these differences because no one's changing.
Right. You accept each other.
Yeah.
If you don't accept each other,
Yeah.
it's going to be miserable. So you
Agreed.
accept it or leave, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
And so we made the choice, okay, we're going to stay. So what, as we make that choice every day, what does that look like? What does it mean when you wake up every day to make the choice to fight for your marriage? You're fighting for your marriage even when the marriage is great.
right.
Every day you wake up, you're fighting for your marriage. Love's not enough.
It was not enough. I've been saying that. That's a good sign. I want to acknowledge you, Nicole, for a moment for your gifts, for everything you've done to overcome from,
Thank you.
I mean, getting food at 8 and 9 that's helped you and your brother, to forging a driver's license, to just doing whatever it takes
Yeah.
to survive and to thrive and to be an example for other people. I acknowledge you for making the big risk, taking the risk to leave something that you've been comfortable with for a long time, which is probably not hard to leave,
Yeah.
and to go all in on something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah.
I acknowledge you, even though maybe you wanted to do it sooner, you did it at the right time for you.
Yeah.
And I acknowledge you for not beating yourself up. I think a lot of us beat ourselves up for things we didn't do,
Yeah.
we should have done. And you're just like, you know, it's the right timing. It needed to happen this way. I acknowledge you for allowing me to try to bring out of you the things that might be lacking,
Yeah.
that could support you, that could take you to the next level. Because that's part of my mission, is to help serve people get to their next level. So I acknowledge you for saying you're committed to this, and I'm going to check in on you.
Please do.
So, yeah, everything you're up to, I'm really excited about it. And
Thank
it's
you.
been great to meet you, yes.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Of course, of course. My final question is, what's your definition of greatness?
Oh, man. Definition of greatness. Man, wow. I could just write an essay on what does it mean to be great. You know, when I think about greatness, I think about not whether you have what it takes. I believe almost everybody has what it takes. I think people don't think that. I think everybody has what it takes, but it's, will you do what it takes?
Ooh.
And that's the difference. A lot of people listening, you have what it takes, but will you do what it takes to be great? Greatness is doing whatever it takes to get there.
The thing is, can you teach discipline? The answer is yes.
How?
You have to have a willing participant. And if the participant's reason why is big enough, if they know I want to achieve X, and the reason why, the motive for their action, motivation, the motive for their action is a reason beyond just themselves, chances are they will do more to achieve that success than if it was just left up to their own. But there are some people that are born, you know, with incredible drive. They just have this insatiable drive, and they'll just, I'll do whatever it takes for the things that I want. And there's other people that want things, but they just don't have this insatiable drive. And this is where, you know, as much as I hated school, I love to use school as an analogy.
Yeah.
In the game of life, whether it's health, wealth, relationships, career, business, spirituality, fun experiences, you have to decide what level of the game do I want to play at. Is it the grade school level, the kindergarten level, the high school level, the university level, the pro level? Because each one of those levels requires a totally different mindset and totally different skill set. They're building blocks on each other, but if you are extremely talented, but you're not prepared to practice and rehearse and drill and fall and fail forward to the next attempt, you will never make it as a pro. You will never make it as a pro business person. You'll never make it as a pro husband or wife or athlete or musician. You just never will. So just get used to that if you're not prepared to pay the price. If you are prepared to pay the price and you have the aptitude and the talent, now we're talking about there's some real potential here. And what we don't know is, you know, what's in your heart? Like, what is the fire that stirs you, that you wake up saying, I will do this even when I don't feel like it. I will do whatever it takes to overcome my temptation for mediocrity, my temptation for excuses, my temptation for reasons and circumstances to hold me back. I won't allow those to be in my way. And if you have that within you, you'll achieve whatever you choose.
Right.
And so the question you asked before is, how do you develop that? Start small.
Yeah.
Start small. So if you don't have discipline, show yourself that you can give yourself one command and one follow through. So you know what? Right now I'm going to get up and I'm going to do 2 push-ups. Right now, not like later, now. Can you give yourself a simple command, one sit-up? Right now, I'm going to go get a glass of water. You start with something ridiculous. I learned many years ago, reduce it to the ridiculous. So if I reduce it to the ridiculous, and I start that, I say, can you do that? Great. Will you? Because that's the difference right there. That's the razor's edge. The people who can,
will you?
Will you?
Yeah.
Great. When?
Now.
Yeah. Right. So if you develop that skill, and specifically from a brain plasticity, a neuroplasticity perspective, as soon as you do that, you give yourself a command and you take the action, you have just created a neural pattern that you can give yourself a command and take action. Now, that may just be one time. Well, what if you did that every hour by putting a little bell on your computer? And every hour, like if my computer was open, I'd have every hour it would say, it's 12 o'clock, it's 1 o'clock. And I'd take 60 seconds just to be in control of my mind. 60 seconds, I don't care where I am.
Stop what you're doing.
Stop, take 6 breaths,
breathe.
Just get centered. Am I on track? Am I off track? Am I doing something I shouldn't be doing versus a high impact activity that I need to be doing? Every hour, I've trained myself to just reset. I didn't always do that. So I just started with 1 a day.
Right.
Then 2.
Sure.
Then 3. Then it was working so well, I said, great, let's do this every hour. But more importantly is as soon as you become the person who believes in themselves, you see, everything you do or don't do leaves an imprint on your self-worth and self-esteem scale. And you know it.
Absolutely.
You know it.
Yeah, every time you have that cake or that cookie,
right.
You either believe in yourself or you don't believe in yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Every time you're voting with every decision.
With actions,
you're disqualifying with every negative belief. You're qualifying with every positive. Same with behaviors. So you start getting aware of, am I qualifying myself to move forward, or am I disqualifying myself through what I say I want and what I do or don't do over and over and over again? Because thought patterns become emotional patterns, which become behavioral patterns. And our brains pick up on our thought, emotional, and behavioral patterns and says, hey, you know what? You've done that one enough. I'm just going to make that automatic for you. Right. So all of a sudden, you know, if you're a person who has lots of positive thoughts, but you suck at taking action, your brain says, let me make that a permanent pattern for you so you don't have to think about it anymore. But I'm also going to create some neural tension, and I'm going to make you pissed off at yourself now. Now you're going to start talking to yourself about how you don't want to not take action, but you're still taking action. And this is where we have this conscious, non-conscious ping pong match going on all the time.
Complex.
Yeah. It's actually complex, but it's actually pretty easy too.
So if someone's listening right now and they're thinking, you know, there's a lot of things I want. You know, I want to get out of this relationship, or I want the relationship. I want to have a better health. I want to have more money, whatever it may be. And they've been saying that for years, and they feel like they've been consuming all the information they need to have, but they haven't been able to take action. And maybe because their why isn't powerful enough. What would you say should be their first step?
Well, the first step is to take one thing. I'm going to go back to one thing.
Yeah.
And say, great, let me move one thing forward. Why? Because that just changes the trajectory of the same pattern repeating itself. And as soon as you interrupt a pattern, and then you repeatedly interrupt the pattern, it's like taking a detour. And as soon as you take a detour one day, you're like, okay, that was okay. Right. But your tendency is to want to go back to what's comfortable. But if you take the detour 2 days, 6 days, 7 days, we know from a neuroscience perspective, it takes about 66 days to create a solid enough neural pattern that it'll go from conscious effort and thinking about it to a non-conscious pattern that has the beginnings of automaticity happening without your involvement. You're just doing.
Yeah.
And so for me, what I do, and for myself, is whenever I want to change something, whether it's a habit, whether it's a thought or emotion or a behavior, I say I'm going to work on this for 100 days. Not 30 days, not 21 days, not 66, which is right around there. I say 100 days. Yeah. And then I focus all of my energy just on that one thing for 100 days. Why?
Can you give an example of something you've done recently?
Sugar. I'm a sugar
Me too.
I'm a sugar, like if he was an alcoholic, I'm a sugaraholic.
Me too.
Right?
It's so bad.
Yeah, so I go like, a week, 2 weeks, no sugar.
Yep.
Then a month, I eat dessert every night. Then 90 days.
Me too. I'm
like a cake and cookie and 5 of them a day. And then
the same way. I can be very disciplined, but it's either way.
yeah, I'm an extremist as well, right? So it's all or nothing, high or off. It's like no in between, right?
If you have one, you're having 10.
Yeah, I don't have one cookie. If there's only one cookie, I go, no. Can I have like 6 or 7 more? My cookie bills at hotels are $21, not 3.
So keep replenishing.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So you take one thing, just one thing that maybe a little challenging.
100 days.
100 days, just 100 days. So let's say you want to drink more water. 100 days, a glass a day. Conscious effort to 1 a day. Whatever you did before, you'll still do, but 1 glass a day. So, I started that with my assistant. I said, I want to drink, like 4 of these a day,
Right.
like, 32 ounces, whatever the case is. And so we got a mug and it's on my desk every time I walk in. And then I have some support from her saying, hey, remember to drink your water. So just do it. So the first, 2-3 weeks, I feel like I'm going to drown myself in so much water. But then it's like, okay, now I'm used to it. Now I'm drinking as much water as possible because the habit is there. And one of the rules that I love to follow is the habit is more important than the intensity at first. So don't worry about the intensity.
Right.
Develop the habit. So can you take 1 minute a day to focus on how you will achieve a goal? Just 1 minute a day. Can you take 1 minute a day to focus on your health? Yeah. Can you take 1 day to retrain your brain? Yeah. Can I take 1 day, or 1 action a day?
Right.
And you start off with something, and reduce it down to just a minute or 2 minutes or 1 behavior. If you can get that behavior to be a habit, it's easy to stack.
Right, of course.
It's just like the foundation of a building.
Sure.
Once you have the foundation, if you build it right, you stack.
Yeah.
And so every good discipline affects another, and every bad discipline affects others.
What do you think about when you have a bad day or when you have a bad moment where you react and you're not on your game, where you're calm in a frustrating moment or someone on your team does something you don't want or traffic or whatever? How do you process that? Do you have bad days?
Yeah. I have not days. I have bad
Moments.
Events. There's when I want to separate like behaviors and emotions. So usually when people say they're having a bad day, sure, certain things may have gone wrong or something that they tried to do, didn't work out. All information and experiences are processed at the non-conscious brain first, and then it gives rise to something we call a feeling. So emotions are processed non-consciously. The electrical and chemical reaction to that is called a feeling. So when I'm not feeling the way that I want to feel, I don't focus on the feeling. I focus on the cause, the neuroelectrical charge that's occurred in my brain. And in most cases, it's something that you're doing to interpret an event that's causing the neuroelectrical signal, causing the feeling. So in meditation, for example, why do you meditate? Well, obviously, it's great for a whole host of health reasons, whether it's less stress, less lower blood pressure, less cortisol release, etc. But the one thing meditation does more than anything else is it gives you the ability to have a pause of awareness so that you sense what's happening at the non-conscious level.
Right.
And what's happening outside of you. So when somebody behaves a certain way, it's processed at the non-conscious level, gives rise to your conscious mind for you to respond. And so when something happens, I like to be able to check in so that I don't react and I have the ability to respond. And if you do that enough through mindfulness, being aware, just being aware of exactly what's going on, then you have fewer and fewer of those times. So, something happened last week. I was in a hotel room and I spilled some water on a shirt that I needed for a wedding that we were going to. And my wife was, oh, fuck, da, 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 da. She was going off deep and I was just calm.
Yeah.
And she goes, aren't you worried about this? I said, will it help?
Right.
Like, no, let's just figure out what to do. The accident already happened.
Mm-hmm. Why are we so wired to react in situations as opposed to be calm and say, well, this reaction is not going to serve a solution?
Well, we have a misunderstanding of flow of information and the way information is processed. And so the reaction happens, again, at the reptilian non-conscious level. So every external stimuli, if you get into some of the brain, which again is my passion, is one of my friends, Dr. Evian Gordon, came up with a great model. He says, the number one thing to understand about the brain is safety and comfort first. Right? So in the environment that you're in, whether you like it or you don't, is irrelevant. Your brain finds that comfortable because it's the homeostasis. But safety first. So any loud noise, any type of real or imagined present or future pain based on the interpretation at the non-conscious level gives rise to automatic feelings. So the signal is sent from the reptilian or lizard brain to the emotional brain, and it's only later logically understood if we take the time
to be aware of it.
Be aware of it.
That's why people react so much in traffic instantly.
That's right.
Instant reactions.
Yeah, but here's something you could do quickly. It's called a reframe. So let's say you're driving in traffic, and let's say somebody cuts you off, and you've been sitting at the same spot for 20 minutes like I did this morning, and somebody you're maybe looking down at your cell phone because you have some time because you're parked on the highway, right? And somebody cuts you off. So you could automatically react, go, son of a bitch, I can't believe he just did that, and just use all of this energy, the cortisol, epinephrine, adrenaline that's flowing through your body and causing stress in your body. Or you can say, well, what if that person just found out their dog died and they're really trying to get home quickly? You go, oh, okay, I guess it's okay if she or he cut in front of me.
Right.
Or they just got a call from their mother fell.
Yeah.
Would you change the way you felt about it? And the answer is, yeah, probably. And the reason, because you changed the frame. So you can learn how to create frames for yourself of how you see the world, how you see failure, how you see effort, how you see your habits, how you create frames in advance that actually serve you through awareness and response versus reactivity. Yeah. And that is what a lot of people who, for example, I'm going to go back to professional athlete. What do you learn how to do? Respond in a variety of different ways in advance or through practice, so that when it's game time, you're just unconsciously doing what you do.
Yeah, especially like, I used to react a lot whenever I felt like anyone was attacking me physically or verbally in the game. I used to react and want to beat people up and hit people and respond. If I got hit in a weird way, I would always want to have the last say, right? The last hit. And my coaches would always train me because I would always get flagged. The second person is the one who gets flagged, not the first person who does the foul. Yeah. And so I started to train myself and visualize, okay, this is going to happen in this game. Like someone's going to punch me in the nuts. Someone's going to bite me. Someone's going to do this. And I can either be calm and focus on the next play, or I can respond and have a penalty for our team. Right. And I started to train my mind, seeing it in the future as it already is happening. And that really supported me in not reacting.
And that's actually one of the best ways. It's a cognitive behavior therapy process where you practice in advance anything good or anything challenging. And what's really amazing, some of the latest research on goal achieving, is the ability, in the past, I used to teach and also do visualize my goals. Whether it was my body, health, relationships, money, charity, whatever. I used to visualize the outcome. And some of the latest research now shows, in addition to visualizing the outcome, visualize the obstacles. And in the past, when we talked about this law of attraction, no, don't visualize the obstacles, you attract them to it. No. Your brain's way smarter than that. So if you have, whether it's a belief that's in your way, a story that's holding you back, a circumstance, references, something that's holding you back from achieving X. So take a look at whatever it is that you already know is holding you back. I don't believe I'm worthy. I don't believe I'm smart enough. I don't believe I'm good enough. I don't believe I'm skilled enough. I'm too young, too old. I'm too this or too that, or not enough of this, not enough of that. So address that and say, okay, here's an obstacle. I'm going to visualize that obstacle being real, and I'm going to visualize just moving it aside and me moving towards my goal. The very act of acknowledging that releases the neural tension around it. If you do that over and over and over again, what your brain starts to see is, yes, there was a struggle, and so it's worthy of me creating this neural pattern around this new effort.
Right.
Because most of what we're doing is, we're on autopilot. We're just eking through the day, on autopilot. And so the brain loves anything that makes it curious. The brain likes anything novel. The brain likes a challenge. So earlier you were asking me about, one of the brain training companies other than ours. I said, does it work? I said, yeah, it's a workout for your brain. And if you can strengthen the neural patterns of you seeing yourself with an obstacle and overcoming it, what do you think that does to your self-confidence and certainty?
Builds it up big time.
Builds it up. So if you actually do the work and develop those patterns in your brain, as you're doing the stuff you need to do in the physical world, you just strengthen those neural patterns, and that's what becomes your habits.
Yeah.
And that's where it becomes really fun, because you can develop the habits and the skills that you need that you'll actually take action on versus having knowledge and skills in your head.
Now, I feel like you've been testing things for decades now with all the research and the work you've done.
Yeah.
So what does your morning routine look like now?
Oh, great.
What's
So today was a little bit different, except for one thing, because I drove from San Diego to LA to be with you. But I wake up, I pee, I do my meditation, 20 to 30 minutes every morning. I don't care where I am in the world. At
what
least
do you
one a
focus
day.
on during that time?
I do a variety of different meditations. So there's meditations that I can do where I'm just observing my thoughts. Now, a lot of people think, well, I thought you're not supposed to have thoughts when you meditate. Says whom? There's hundreds of different ways to practice awareness. See, meditation is the art of awareness. Awareness internally, awareness externally, but also the various millions of layers that exist in the physical and the non-physical world. So this morning, I did a meditation with some ocean sounds. And so it was about 5 o'clock. I woke up this morning, sat in my little sofa, with my feet propped up, and did a 20-so minute meditation in the dark with the ocean, just listening to the ocean, just paying attention and going into a trance-like state where after 2 or 3 minutes, I disappeared. Like my body was part of air and space. So today I was using sound to get into that trance-like state. Other days I'll do a mantra, whether it's, a lot of people know transcendental meditation. So it's the Om mantra. So you just take a deep breath in. And then as you exhale, it's Om. And the question is, why would you do that? And the answer is, anytime you can give your brain a rhythm, it will entrain to that rhythm. That's one. Anytime you could pay attention to your breath, inhale and exhale, you turn off the parasympathetic nervous system. You turn on the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and relaxation and your calm state of flow, versus your sympathetic nervous system, which is the stress response system of adrenaline, norepinephrine, cortisol, etc. So when you get the serotonin and oxytocin and dopamine going, and you're in that state of calmness, you're able to enter deeper levels of consciousness and awareness. So you're able to observe a thought. You're able to hear your heartbeat. You're able to sense different things that are being risen in your body through thoughts that you're having. So you can actually start to see, when I have this thought, here's the sensation in my body.
Identity came to my mind just now, and I'm curious about your research or just your personal findings on shaping our own identity with ourselves, shaping our identity, having an identity, and how that helps us, how that either helps us or hurts us with our confidence and our personal power.
Well, I mean, there's so many different kinds of identities that we can have. I think that when we get, there's...
Is it important to have a specific type of identity? Is it important to have a wide range of identities, of things that we're into?
Tell me what kind of identity you're talking about.
An identity is, I'm a man from Ohio. I grew up in Ohio. Okay. I love football.
Right.
I love all these different things that are likes, interests, and we identify as.
Well, I think that the self-affirmation stuff is all about values, right? And so your identity, is your values, and that I think is great. Being true to your values is great. The values I'm talking about are not values that need to be flexible. They can be wide, right? But I think that when we get really identified with a certain group or interest, it can get dangerous. I mean, I think first we stop thinking for ourselves, and we start becoming much more concerned about remaining part of the group than about
Our value, our personal values.
exactly. And so we compromise ourselves to be in the group, and I think that can be really dangerous. Like, we're losing our sense of agency for sure, but also, might be doing things that are not good,
Right.
like not healthy for us or for other people. So that I think can be. I think we need to stay in check around identity in that way. Just because it's what most people in the group are doing doesn't mean it's what I need to be doing.
What is something we can do, I guess, to reflect on or give ourselves feedback on a yearly or monthly or daily basis that supports that?
I think and this is not empirical. This is kind of off the cuff, but I've been thinking about this a little bit lately. Like, thinking about what are my identity groups that I chose? Like, what are my chosen identity groups? And are there things that have happened in those identity groups that I don't agree with, but I didn't do anything to correct it, or I kind of let it slide? Like, how can I keep myself honest about these identity groups?
Right.
So
because you may like the Grateful Dead,
right?
But there may be things that happen at the concerts that you don't acknowledge or you don't like. But
yes, exactly.
You don't want to be, I'm never going to watch or support the Grateful Dead again because this happened.
That's right.
But how can I make sure, I can enjoy a hobby and an interest,
totally.
but not the identity of that thing.
That's right. And so I think that, there are things that happen at shows that I, haven't been liking lately.
Yeah.
Like, we talked about this a bit, like people being very territorial in the front space, which is called the pit, about their space, and being really nasty to each other. And it kind of goes against, to me, the whole sort of essence of that community. And I get angry about it. Like, but part of it feels like righteous anger. Like, I want you to not be that way, but I also need to check myself. Like, I don't want to contribute to the anger either. But it also doesn't, because it's imperfect, doesn't mean that I have to leave it.
Yeah.
Right? Because I get into I get into that trap sometimes.
Really?
I sort of get into the oh, there's something wrong. I probably shouldn't do this anymore. And I need to accept that nothing's perfect. And I'm still allowed to love imperfect things as long as I'm checking myself.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes
I feel
sense.
like I kind of...
No, it makes sense. Yeah, for sure. There's we talked about this a little bit earlier about the kind of fake it till you make it thing, but it's more of like facing it till you make it, I think is how you reframe it, right?
I say fake it till you become it.
Fake it till you become it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's hard to, why is fake it till you make it harmful? If it's like, let me just keep faking and hopefully it'll happen.
I think the problem, and it depends on how people interpret
Yes.
it, I realize, but the way I interpret fake it till you make it is kind of like, sort of, the slick salesperson who really does not buy what they're selling, but they're gonna sell hard.
Right.
And never, and they're going to be faking that they will. Yeah, making it might be, being promoted or making a lot of money, but they're still faking it, right? You don't really ever faking it till you make it means faking it, getting the promotion and continuing to fake it,
yeah.
Right? Fake it till you become it, and it's also about what you're conveying to other people. Faking it till you become it. The way that I think of this is you're tricking yourself into believing in yourself, right? You're tricking yourself into, incrementally be a little bit more courageous.
Every time, yeah.
And eventually you become the person that you are in your mind's eye as your best self, right? So you're basically, it's like, I kind of think of it visually like, you're this, we're not just shells, but think of yourself as a shell and you're sort of half full. Faking it till you become it is sort of filling that shell more and more and more.
You're
until it's
partially
complete.
it, but you're not fully
You're
yet.
getting there.
Because imposter syndrome is a term that's been thrown around a lot in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I'm hearing it all the time. Everyone's saying, not everyone, but a lot of people are saying, I feel a sense of imposter syndrome, like I don't belong, or I'm not ready, or I don't have the whatever.
Right.
For me, I felt like I had nothing at the beginning, and I was just like, I'm just going to throw myself in, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't, I have nothing to embarrass myself because I had nothing. I was living on my sister's couch for a year and a half. I had no money. I didn't have a college degree. So I was like, there's nowhere else I can go that's worse than where I'm at.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything to lose.
Yeah.
I was just like, I have nothing to lose, so I'm going to throw myself in there and hopefully certain things happen. So I didn't feel like an imposter. I felt like I'm an experience and I need to figure out how to gain experience by learning skills, by finding mentors, by reading, by consuming content, and developing more confidence. But why has imposter syndrome become such a popular phrase? And is there a way to actually overcome it? Or are we always going to kind of feel like imposters if we're constantly growing? Because there's a new thing that next year I've never done that I'm going to try to do that I'm an imposter because I've never done it. So I'm going to feel a sense of, oh, well, I've never done this, so here we go. If I'm growing as an individual, right?
Well,
we should always feel it in a sense.
Definitely. So I think, okay, to the question about, well, I don't know why it became, it's a catchy, it's a sticky term to describe an experience that's pretty universal. And so it became, it's funny because it's to social psychologists, it's like a thing we've talked about since the 1970s. Not that I was talking much in the 1970s, but that it was coined in the 1970s, and it's so in academia, it's something we talk about. But it really got sticky in the last, I do think that I talk about it in the TED Talk. I think that was part of it. I think there were some other books that came out that were talking about it, and it just captures the experience so well of feeling like an imposter in your own life, right? But the interesting thing is that well, first, the woman who coined the term, Pauline Clance, who was teaching at Oberlin at the time in the 70s.
In Ohio?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, Ohio.
That's great.
Yeah, you feeling
My
your
identity.
identity?
My identity.
Exactly. You feel good about it. So well, first of all, she says that she wishes she had not called it a syndrome because a syndrome implies that it's pathological and rare, like it's unusual, and it's actually so not unusual.
It's
right?
common,
It's there are different estimates, like 75 to 85% of people feel imposter syndrome. Also, women do not experience it more than men. Men are just less likely to openly talk about it.
Yeah.
So when it's anonymous, which is a burden, I think,
and then they
on
hold
men,
on to it
because they think they're the only ones feeling it.
Yes, they feel alone.
And then women get the burden of being like, oh, you always feel like imposters, right? So it cuts both ways in bad ways. But I don't think many people stop feeling it if they keep on trying new challenges.
Yes.
So in my book, I interviewed Neil Gaiman, the amazing author of, many, 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 many bestsellers and super award winner.
Yeah.
And anyway, Neil really had bad, part of why I interviewed Neil is he's a lovely human, but he's one of the only men who talked openly about having imposter syndrome. And so I wanted to talk to him for that reason. Also, he has a way with words, but he said that in the beginning, when he first started writing and was successful, he kept being afraid that somebody was going to come and tap him on the shoulder and be like, are you Neil Gaiman? And he'd say, yes, I am. Say, oh, sorry, we made a mistake.
Oh, wow.
We're taking all this back. And then he said he finally got to the point, he'd written American Gods, which was like his big novel, he said. Like that was the big, grand novel. And he said he thought he had finally conquered imposter syndrome. And he spoke to one of his mentors and said, I think I finally conquered this. And he said, I finally conquered writing a novel. And he said, you never conquer writing a novel, you just conquer writing the novel that you're writing. And so next time, now a lot of his books have been turned into really wonderful television series, and he's a showrunner, right? And that was a whole new thing for him. So he said it just pops up. You see it on your desk, you're like, oh, there's the imposter, and he'll go away. And so you experience it every time you start something new. It just goes away faster. You don't get hung up on it
Yeah.
You don't become anxious about the imposter feeling.
And I think the more you're living your life and creating and building, and if you can start to reflect on, like, look at all the times I was feeling imposter syndrome, and look what I was able to create,
Yeah.
and the results I got, and the success or the impact that I had from making this thing or creating this thing, I can do it again.
Exactly.
It's like looking backwards to see the results.
Right. So you have this transferable sense of agency.
Yes.
Like self-efficacy is the way it's defined in psychology is like it's your it's your belief that you're able to do this certain thing. Agency is wider than that, and this feeling of being agentic. And I think that when you conquer imposter syndrome again and again, that feeling does become transferable.
Yes.
Right. And you're like, this is a totally new thing, but like I've never been part of this rodeo, but I think I'm going to be okay.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Right.
You just know, okay, I've done this before many times, I can do it again.
And if not, I'll be okay.
I'll be all right. I'll survive.
Right, exactly.
I'm curious, I'm a big believer that self-doubt is the killer of dreams. I think when we doubt ourselves, we're not breathing correctly, we're shrinking, we're not taking any actions, we don't have the courage because we're just constantly in self-doubt. Do you think we can ever have too much self-belief?
I mean, geez, that's a tricky question. First, I think what you call self-doubt, I think of as personal powerlessness.
Yes.
And what happens is that it activates what we call the behavioral inhibition system. So it leads us to, be more pessimistic, to be more fearful, to think more narrowly, less creatively, to not take risks, to see people as predators, right? It inhibits us in every way. Even physically, like we can tolerate less pain when the inhibition system is activated.
Really?
Feeling personally powerful activates the behavioral approach system, which does all of the opposite. So it's like instead of seeing a challenge as a threat, we see it as an opportunity.
Interesting.
Instead of seeing other people as potential predators, we see them as potential allies and collaborators. We feel optimistic instead of pessimistic. Now, you can get to the point of feeling too powerful.
Right.
And, in that case, I think that one of the things that happens is that people, they're not as good at taking other people's perspectives. So they're not as good at perspective taking when they become real, but this is a lot about social power. So when people have both social power and personal power, they're not as good at taking other people's perspectives because
their feedback or their information or their ideas,
just
or
understanding what other people are like. So
feeling.
It's honestly, it's really more about social power.
Got it.
As people gain social power, they're less dependent on others, and so when you have not much social power, when you're at the bottom of the hierarchy, you really need to be able to read other people's minds. Like you really need to understand what they're thinking because you're dependent on them. And as you gain more power, you're less dependent, and so you're more likely to stereotype people. You're less likely to be able to take their perspective. You just kind of forget what it feels like to be where they are.
Yes.
And so I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
I think, there's a lot of research on overconfidence versus confidence. And overconfidence is, I don't even really fully understand where it comes from. And to me, I don't think it is overconfidence. I think it's a different thing altogether.
It's like ego.
Yes,
Yeah.
or like arrogance,
Yeah.
And overconfidence, arrogance is often coming from a place of feeling threatened and defensive. And it's a smokescreen for insecurity, right?
Yeah.
So I say it's a smokescreen for insecurity. And
Right.
it's a way of deflecting. It's a way of preventing people from challenging you because honestly, they don't find you pleasant. They don't challenge you because they don't like you, not because they believe you, right? So, I always say confidence, not arrogance. Confidence allows room to be wrong. So you can hear people. When you're confident, self-affirmed, you know who you are, you're able to hear feedback. You don't feel like you have to steal the microphone all the time.
Yeah, confidence plus curiosity. It's
Yeah,
like being willing to be,
absolutely.
okay, I feel confident, but also I might have a beginner's mind.
Totally. And if you're confident and you're excited about an idea, you should want that to be as good as it can be. And so, if you're around people who are offering you good feedback, confidence allows you to hear the feedback, which I think is really interesting. So I love watching Shark Tank.
Yeah, it's great.
I love reading the body language.
Yes.
Jonah, my son, and I used to watch this when he was younger. He loves reading the body language
so
and
good.
guessing who's going to do well. And I know you've talked to people about the
Yes.
body language of lying, and and it's so fascinating. I think this body language of arrogance is really
You can read it, you can feel it.
Yeah, and it's also body language is also nonverbal vocal cues, like a certain way of speaking, and but it's like it's when they don't buy what they're selling. If you don't buy what you're selling, nobody's going to buy what you're selling. If you don't believe your story, nobody's going to believe your story. Not at least in the long run.
How do you learn to buy what you're selling?
Well, first of all, when people say, well, how do I sell something that I don't believe in? I say don't
sell it.
You shouldn't be doing it.
Go find a different vision.
Think, right? I mean,
Find
you
a
can
different
try,
career.
but I don't think you should. You need to check in with yourself about that. The whole there are different reasons why we don't buy what we're selling. You could not buy what you're selling because you're actually self-doubt. You doubt your ability to sell anything.
Okay.
Right? And that's different.
Then the product or the vision. that you
Right.
have.
Or it's just not interesting to you. It's not something that you would use, but it's not that you think there's anything wrong with it. So there are a number of reasons that you can fix, right? You can learn to understand, well, this product, really is helpful and valuable to these other people, and I need to understand their perspective, right? That makes you a more effective, salesperson.
Yes.
But there are also reasons that should lead you to go, I shouldn't be selling it, right? So you need to figure out, is it because I don't relate to it, or I don't believe in myself, or is it because there's something wrong with this thing?
It's like, if you want to have everything you could possibly want and more, then be a good person. The better a person you are, the more likely that is to happen. That doesn't mean that you're completely protected against getting cut off at the knees.